Welcome back to Funeral DNA, the podcast that analyzes the unique components, trends, innovations, and services that make up the funeral industry, or as we call it, Funeral DNA. I'm Mike Davis.
And I'm Ashley Solomon.
And today we bring in Stephanie Poirier from White Rose Aqua Cremation. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long have you been in the industry and how long with White Rose?
Sure. So we've been in the industry for a few years now, but it is pretty new to us. This is our first funeral home, the first one I've worked at, and same with the owner. But we finally just opened actually at the end of last year, 2020. But yeah, we were both in other careers until a few years ago when we decided we wanted to go down this path, and it was something we were both interested in. And so we've spent the last few years learning and researching and developing and trying to create something that we thought was sort of lacking in this realm.
So would you mind exploring and explaining what aqua cremation is and a bit about that process?
Sure. So aqua cremation, I'll say this first, it goes by a lot of names. That's the name that we decided to use. The scientific name is alkaline hydrolysis, but it also can be called water cremation, aquamation, resumation. It just depends on where you are. And it's sort of what it sounds like. It's water-based cremation instead of flame. So it just uses a different process.
And what equipment do you use? Like, I'm imagining just sort of like a big bathtub myself right now.
Kind of, yeah. It's, I think it's actually pretty cool looking because it's a big stainless steel machine. They're a little different depending on which brand you use or which manufacturer, but the one that we use is sort of a tube. So it's sort of a cylinder that's just stainless steel. It's really beautiful. That's kind of it, really. I mean, it's a lot smaller than the flame machines. It's not an ugly thing. It's actually a very sleek machine.
Okay. And why have you found clients have been choosing this method as a way to be cremated?
It's going more on what people are looking for. It's more green. So, it's not only more eco-friendly in a lot of ways, it's also more gentle. When people think about water and being cremated by water, they're less upset by it somehow than the flame. It seems like a nicer process for their grandmother or their loved one, right? So I think a lot of people are gravitating toward that, but especially because green funerals and green death is becoming more and more popular, the aqua cremation really lends to that same thing.
So with most things that are green and good for the environment, usually there's a pretty difficult process getting everything functioning around that. So what has that been like getting started up in California for you, especially in 2020?
It's been a process. Like you said, it's because it's newer to, I think, a lot of people. It's taken years and years for California to finally pass it. I mean, this has actually been a process that's been going on for 25 years or something across the US. And they've been using it with animals and scientific disposal for a long time. But, consumers can get a little hesitant on new technology. And so, especially with something that is green, so it's not as favorable necessarily because it's more expensive and all of that. And so it's been a process. In fact, it was supposed to, technically it became legal in California July 1st, 2020. So it's been almost a year that it's been legal in California to process human remains in this manner. We've had vets doing it for a long time, but however, we're actually still waiting on our license to operate our machine because it is still in process. So we're still working on it, but we're very close now.
So, seeing as that's very close and you're going to finally start doing that in California, I know we had talked earlier, you guys have been offering green burials for the last little while. So what is a green burial then? How is that, say, different than what aqua cremation is if they're both green?
Yeah, so our funeral home is really trying to focus on some of the more eco-friendly death options that a lot of consumers don't necessarily know about. And green burial or natural burial is one that when I talk to people about it, they're sort of surprised. They didn't even know it was an option. In California, there are a handful of cemeteries that are green burial certified or some kind of hybrid where you can do traditional and green. But basically, green natural burial is just, there's no embalming.
Yeah, I paused on our end.
Okay. So I don't know where that left off, but
you left
I
off
don't know what.
right about where the embalming. So no embalming is done for a green burial, and then
Okay. Yep, no embalming. So there's no chemicals going into the earth. Anything that goes with the body has to be biodegradable. So if it's a casket or a coffin, it has to be able to biodegrade, or it's just like a shroud that you can be wrapped in. So there's no metal, plastic, chemicals going into your burial plot with you. It's just your body and some other things that can biodegrade. So it's a much more eco-friendly option.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
So with these new methods, have you seen a surge in popularity? Are they getting more common where you are? Can you see that potentially trending upwards as people are more aware with like climate crisis and trying to take care of our earth a little bit better?
Oh yeah, I think it's something we actually talk a lot about when we do any sort of industry meetings, conventions, all of that. It's trending more and more green all of the time. People are looking for more options, knowing the impact now that traditional funerals, traditional burials cause. And people are actually getting excited. Sometimes it's hard to talk about death with the public. People don't want to hear about it, talk about it. But even those people, when they start to hear about things like water cremation, green burial, the composting that's now happening in some places, all these different green options, people are actually excited, and then they start asking questions and talking about it. And I'm in Southern California, so everyone loves green.
That's going to tie into right when I was asking next. I was going to ask, what do you think is coming up in the future? And would you mind talking a little bit about human composting and that trend as it comes out, if you are
Yeah, I think it's a very cool concept. Right now, Oregon might be the only state that's currently doing it. I think they just legalized it in one or two other states, but it hasn't started yet. And we're trying to bring it to California as well. And it's basically just a decomposition, but in a way where it's controlled, and then there's sort of a soil left at the end that you can, as a family, you can take with you if you would like and plant a garden or something. You don't have to, but it's also a very green option, obviously, because there's really nothing, you're not taking up any space in the earth like green burial, even though green burial is very good and pretty green. And you're not using any kind of machine like you would with cremation. So it's, I think that would be another thing to add to the green death arena. There's some other things people have sort of talked about and started working on that haven't gone very well, mushroom soups and things. So I don't know, I don't know too many other things coming around, but I think the alkaline hydrolysis, the aqua cremation, yeah. So I think with the water cremation, at least, we're at about 50% of the states now in the US that are legally operating at least one machine. We're partners with a place in Nevada, which is how we can actually still offer that to people in California right now until our machine can be operated. But even in Nevada, where it's been legal for a while, there's only one machine that I know of. So, we're still going, we're still trying to educate people, and I think it'll become more and more popular in that realm before we get to people being really comfortable with something like composting.
Something that comes to mind here now with the aqua cremation, then obviously, with the fire cremation, people are given an urn with ashes in there. Do the families get given any remains, or are there any remains from aqua cremation?
Yeah, in fact, typically there's more remains with the aqua cremation. The process is a lot different. So actually less gets taken away during the process. So you're left with quite a bit more, and they're different. So instead of looking like ashes, and we try not to call them that because that's not what they are, it's almost like a powder, and it's sort of white or off-white. So it's actually a lot nicer looking if you do, end up seeing it if you do a scattering or something, right? It looks a lot nicer. And yeah, typically you actually get more of it. So we have to have bigger urns that we usually supply out to people, but yes.
Okay, and so you said it's happening all over the United States. Obviously, we're from Canada. Do you know, is this happening in Canada? Is this worldwide? Is it starting to pop up other places?
It is. Yeah, it is worldwide, and some places have been doing it longer. Mostly places in Europe have been operating already longer than we have. I know of at least one facility in Canada. It's in somewhere east. Oh gosh, I can't remember now. His name is Trevor. But he has a funeral home in Canada where he is operating a machine. And he said that, something like 80% of his clientele is going with the water-based instead of the flame-based cremation at his funeral home. So I think it's successful. I don't know how many other funeral homes in Canada are doing it, but I know there's at least one.
So if, and we sort of asked this of everybody, but if you could leave the audience with one note or one thing that you want to make sure that they understand about aqua cremation, what would that be?
I think the biggest thing is that sometimes people will not want to talk about new technology, especially when it comes to death, because they don't want to think about it, or maybe it's icky or whatever. So they kind of back off and say, oh, no, I'll just go with what I'm used to and what I'm, familiar with. So what I want people to do is sit and think about what they would want for their loved one, because saying it is a more gentle process. It's, nicer, I think, on the loved body and all of that, but also the environment. What are you leaving behind? So I would just ask people to sort of think about their death, think about their loved ones, think about what they would want, talk about it, explore, even if it's not cremating, maybe there's something else that you can think of that would be beneficial, as opposed to the traditional burial we're all sort of used to.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess a lot of people, when they're talking about death, they're looking for a legacy or what to leave behind, or how to leave it a better world. And perhaps doing it through a green burial, aqua cremation, or just leaving the earth a little bit better would be a great way for them to do that.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I think that, it shows that even in death, you're caring about what you're leaving behind.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Stephanie. We really appreciate your time. Hopefully things, open up for you a little quicker in California, and you're able to get your machine up and running and not having to, utilize the help with the friends in Nevada.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. So once again, guys, thank you for listening at home. Thank you, Stephanie, for coming on from White Rose Aqua Cremation. I'm Mike Davis.
And I'm Ashley Solomon.
And thank you for being on Funeral DNA. Next week, stay tuned, where our podcast will analyze a different unique component, trend, and innovation that makes up the funeral industry, or as we call it, Funeral DNA. Bye for now.